In the second video lecture of this week, we will discuss how NEPA has impacted environmental practices. Just in summary, I want you to remember that the four important strategies of NEPA that we discussed in the previous video lecture are stop and think, power of information, litigation and its role in the development of environmental impact assessment, and the fourth one is government-wide, which is umbrella approach. So it's worth mentioning the NEPA had a huge impact how federal agencies approach their projects. And in this slide, we will discuss about this impact. So in NEPA section 102, 2C, is the action forcing mechanism of NEPA, which means federal agencies need to take in their consideration of the environmental impact that could happen from their proposed project or actions. So let us think about federal agencies before NEPA became a law. So before, federal agencies had to consider the technical, if they have a project or proposed action, they take in consideration only the technical part, which is engineering, how they gonna do this project engineering wise, and look only to these aspects in terms of the project, and also look only to the aspects of economic feasibility. So about the finance and like how they gonna finance this proposed action or project. But now after NEPA, they add environmental consideration that often were not part of their original mandate before when they were doing their projects before NEPA. So this is very important impact for NEPA for the federal agencies. Another important impact NEPA that continues to have is that we call NEPA as the Magna Carta of environmental law. So NEPA expanded, and approximately 100 countries around the world adopted NEPA, and they start using it and use the environmental impact assessment process as a part of their environmental law. So we have also multilateral and bilateral organizations such as World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, WHO, and various other countries. They start using environmental impact assessment as part of their assessing the environmental impact for their projects. Also, at the national level, we have our own state environmental policy acts, or SEPAs, which is known as Little NEPA. This one, which is a state model of the National Environmental Policy Acts, we have about 16 states that they have their own little NEPAs or SEPAs, State Environmental Policy Act. So that's why this is a very important impact for NEPA at the international and milestone, as well as the state model. So another impact I want you to think about that our national policy target targets our own federal agencies. So a question here, why is that? You remember we talked already about in our previous video lecture about the people of the United States were protesting during environmental movement in the 60s and were calling for change. The question here, who they were railing against and wanted to see change for corporate polluters in some industries. These industries, just to name some of them, we have here in the slide, we have industries such as the minerals and mining, highway and airport constructions, oil industries and offshore oil development, chemical industries, and many more. So there were lots of concerns and angers toward these industries because of their actions. However, NEPA came as a result of these public movements, and it didn't target those corporate industries directly. Instead, it targeted the federal agencies. So you need to think about this. One could say that NEPA targeted federal agencies as the US Congress decided to start with targeting themselves first by targeting federal government to have them being mindful and implementing the environmental national policy that has been enacted. And since the federal agencies involved in many industries, actually, this might be smart of US Congress because by that, these corporate industries could, uh, implement NEPA through the projects that federal agencies manage or lead. So, this could be a good thing after the success of NEPA and changing the government mindset or shifting the paradigm of the way the government agencies were managing and implementing their projects and include some sort of environmental impact assessment for corporate actions. So, after we know about the impacts, all the impacts of the NEPA on the practice or performing of the environmental impact assessment, I want you to know that the balance of power in the US and what is the role of NEPA through this power of balance. So we have three branches of government. We have legislative, which is they wrote and passed NEPA and proposed the amendments. The executive branch, which is include the CEQ, the Council of Environmental Quality, they oversees and issue guidelines and regulations for how NEPA will be implemented by the federal agencies. And the last branch, which is judicial, it's in charge of interprets NEPA. And this will be our next focus of discussion when we discuss the Chicket Creek court case. So one only important thing remaining, which is who enforces NEPA. We mentioned this in our previous video lecture, and I said that citizen through the citizen litigation. So it's very important for you to understand the role of citizens within NEPA. So the role of citizens comes from the role of public opinion in pushing NEPA into law, as we discussed before. In fact, citizens' effort in the court has led to NEPA enforcement and includes most significantly conservation organizations that involved in these court cases. So now here, do you see how intimately the structure and the nature of our government is intertwined with how NEPA works and what implications does the EIA have as it practiced in other countries as well as international institutions. So all this important for you to know. Okay, now we will move to another thing and we will talk about NEPA enforcement. So it's very important for you to understand that there is no enforcement mechanism readily apparent in NEPA. However, it was presumed that NEPA would be actively enforced by the, this is what they were thinking, by the president acting through Office of Management and Budget and CEQ and by Congress. However, NEPA enforced by the citizen through the citizen litigations. So another important role we would like to talk about today, it's the role of the US EPA, US Environmental Protection Agency. US EPA was established in December 1970, a little bit about after, like NEPA signed to the law, as the Environmental Regulatory Agency of the United States. So, US EPA is not a chief administrative agency of EISs or environmental impact statements. It was the central repository of the environmental impact statements. How it reviews environmental impact statements, which is the documents, and that prepared by other federal agencies. So it reviews the environmental impact statements prepared by the federal agencies, and they give it certain rating in terms of the compliance. And we will talk more about this when we come and talk about the specific role of the United States Environmental Protection Agencies. So Ohio Environmental Protection Agency reviewing permit, this is their role, reviewing permit applications and issuing permits to facilities. Also, investigating citizens' complaints that come to them about, like any environmental issues. Also, one of their role is monitoring to make sure all environmental standards are met. For example, environmental standards that, like stated in the Clean Water Act or Clean Air Act. Also, Ohio EPA providing technical assistance to help regulated facilities obey environmental laws and permits requirements. So these are the role for the Ohio EPA. So there are many divisions within Ohio EPA, and some of them Air Division and the drinking water, as well as solid waste and other wastes, and emergency response and cleanup, which is in charge of any spills and spills control. So environmental impact assessment has expanded scope and narrow scope. So let us talk a little bit about the expanded scope of environmental impact assessment and what that means. So some of the topics that could be covered under under this expanded scope of environmental impact assessment is global warming, climate change, biodiversity, sustainable development, and international trade and development policies. So all this could be like expand the scope, and we can do through the environmental impact assessment process. We have narrowed scope for the environmental impact assessment, which is, like concepts of the environmental impact assessment process that have become fundamental to, like numerous of the federal and state level environmental program permits as well as reports. So the documentation is example for that, like environmental impact assessment that they do it. You remember we talk about doing environmental impact assessment to decide if they want to do full environmental impact environmental impact assessment or no. And also other example is environmental impact statements documents. So here are some examples of relevant permits and reports that included in the narrowed scope. Something like air quality permits that issued by the industries to disclose about what impact that they can do from their projects based on the Clean Air Act standards and based on the amendments that done in 1990. Also, some point source was wastewater discharges permits. This is another type of the permits that describe the narrowed scope of environmental impact assessment. and industrial area stormwater discharge permits. And also in the next slide, I put for you like more other examples just for you to have a look for them and have an idea about what the narrowed scope of environmental impact assessment could include in terms of permits.